Yeah, I'm in the waiting room for the Regents meeting right now, so I may have to drop at any second. But
I can
I'm glad.
Greg, if you have to drop off. So thank you for being here.
I'll do my best. You know, it's once again one of those things where I'm not in control.
So it is 11 and we will go ahead and get started. Just an FYI that we will be recording this town hall. So it is being recorded. Again, if you have questions, please use the form that has been posted into the chat. Staff assembly members will be keeping an eye on those questions that are submitted. And we will try to get to as much questions as we can. I will now turn this over to our Executive Vice Provost and our Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost, Greg Camfield. And then Greg, if you do have to hop off, I know Danya is happy to hop in as well to provide a quick welcome message to staff.
Okay, thanks. So, welcome to all of you. I'm Greg Camfield, as I hope you all know, Executive Vice Chancellor and Provost. And I'm very happy that the Staff Assembly is putting together this town hall with Danya Matos, who's been working on the People First group as part of our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. As I hope most of you know, we have a number of work groups looking at different aspects of our response. And to my mind, this is the most important. You know, we talk a lot about resilience, but without really talking very much about what that means. It's actually something that's been studied. And there are a number of components to it. It's not grit. It's not just something that's part of who you are innately. It's a soft skill, if you will, that people develop, and it develops in a context. And yes, it requires optimism, which we think of as a personal trait, but optimism too is part of systems. I was just reading this morning in the Washington Post about doom scrolling, where our social media hook us on negative stories, and each time we click on another one, the artificial intelligence algorithms say, oh, this person wants more negative stories. How can you get anything else in COVID times, right? So it's part of the system. Your optimism gets undercut by participating in something that's been developed by our culture. You have to have a willingness to face fear and to be resilient. And yet, again, if we have too much, we snap. Resilience is something that needs stress. It needs to be the right amount of stress. So when we're surrounded by things out of our control, the fear gets too much, facing it is almost overwhelming and impossible. You need physical health for resilience. We think of resilience as psychological only, but it's mind and body together. And resilience requires strong values. You have to know who you are, and values are part of a cultural context, part of a system. And I hope that our focus on people first supports your values and allows you to flourish because your values are supported by us. Resilience requires social support. It's not just this institution's support, but your close networks. Human beings are social animals, and I think the hardest thing about COVID is that it asks us to be isolated, and it's really hard to be resilient when you're isolated. One of the ways you can create a sense of social support if you're not physically around people is through a larger sense of yourself in the world. Religious feelings and organizations support that. Philosophical positions support that, a sense of your place in history or society as a whole, or your role, your sense of how you belong in something larger than yourself, again, supports resilience. You'll notice those things are social. They aren't about you, they're about the system. And we also need role models of resilience. And when we're all under stress, how are we going to find those? We have to be them for one another. I hope that what we do as an institution can help you find some resilience, and you in turn can feed that back into the institution, because we're in this together. It's the only way we're going to get through it together. I saw a sign about masking, face coverings for COVID, but I think it puts it perfectly. You masked to protect me, eye mask protect you. And I think that's, very succinctly saying how we are in this together, and our resilience will depend on working together. Now, I know you're going to have questions for us, and there are various presentations and so forth. I hope that by the end of the day, you'll have some of the questions that you need answered to help you be more resilient. I know that many of you are in home situations that are very challenging to do your work. I know that many of you who are required to work on campus are having to face fears on a daily basis about exposures. We hope to be able to answer some of the questions that you need answered so that you can be part of a support system that allows you individually to be resilient and allows us collectively to be resilient. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg. And I also want to allow at this time Danya to say a few words as a welcoming to staff.
Perfect. Thank you, Alvin. Just to echo each of your Provost Campfield's comments, but also say that, first of all, I'm one of those Zoom waivers. So like you, I like to say all of you. We sold this out, so we're at over 300 folks. So really means we achieved our intent of bringing you together to connect, but really get your questions answered. I'll say that in putting together People First, we wanted to do just that. And I thank my colleagues and all of you. I really see each of us as leaders. And as leaders, I really want to communicate this message that your well-being comes first. As you balance all these responsibilities at home, please make every effort that those responsibilities tip the scales to your personal well-being, because that's truly matters. And so I will stop there because I want us to get our questions answered, but thank you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Danya. So again, I do want to welcome everybody. So Nyan, good morning, welcome. My name is Alvin Cha, and I am the Vice President of Staff Assembly. Yesenia Correll, the President, was unable to attend the town hall today due to a conflict in her schedule. She did, however, want me to share with you all some of the Staff Assembly accomplishments that we've had over this past fiscal year. Under the leadership of Priya Lockeretti, Staff Assembly was able to collaborate with Human Resources and the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Office to share the results of the UC 2019 Staff Engagement Survey. Interim Chancellor Nathan Brostrom helped us address one of the key areas of growth, which was ensure people feel they have enough contact with management. As a response to the results, Staff Assembly hosted Coffee with the Chancellor, as well as 3 virtual leadership chats in the spring. These virtual chats are available on the Staff Assembly website for anyone who might have missed the event or would like to rewatch the discussion. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, the Staff Engagement Work Group was unable to connect last year. Staff Assembly had to reprioritize some of our initiatives, but we also became a stakeholder in work groups that were created in response to all of the changes that have occurred. Other accomplishments include staff representation on all of our active campus-wide committees, participation in various senior leadership searches, as well as successfully hosting delegates from all the UC staff assemblies across the university for one of the quarterly CUCSA, or Council of UC Staff Assembly meetings. I do want to thank all of our Staff Assembly board members from last year for all of their hard work and ensuring that we were able to have a virtual Staff Appreciation Week back in May. So big shout out to you all. And then finally, Staff Assembly wants to acknowledge that not only are we living through a historic pandemic, but we are witnessing living through a social justice revolution. We will continue to work and collaborate with the administration and campus partners to advocate for staff. We want to make sure that staff are able to thrive and, as Greg had mentioned, be resilient during these challenging times of transformation. As part of our commitment to staff, our town hall today will include an update from our Chief Human Resource Officer, Nicole Pollock, as well as a presentation from the People First work group. We will then take an opportunity to ask questions that were submitted earlier this week, as well as some of the live questions submitted today. Please submit your questions using the submission form that is posted in the chat. We most likely will not be able to get to all of the questions asked or receive responses to all the questions submitted during the town hall, but we will be working on creating an FAQ for the questions that are received. With that, I would like to invite our Chief Human Resource Officer, Nicole Pollock, to provide staff with an update. So Nicole, I give you the screen.
Great. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining. As Alvin mentioned, we have over 300 people that are currently in attendance, and this is being recorded. So for those that weren't able to get into the live session, they can watch it after the fact, or you can always go back for reference. So I was considering, what is it that staff would want to hear about, and was looking at all of the various resources across campus. One of the resources that's recently been published is a survey from the People First work group. I sit on that work group, so you'll hear from them a little bit or later. But there's been mention that there's a lot of resources, but staff really aren't aware of all of the resources. So the way that I'll formulate this presentation is talking about what HR in partnership has developed as far as staff resources, things that you can use during this COVID situation and beyond. And then, of course, in taking a look at the questions that were pre-submitted, we grouped the questions to determine what were the most frequently asked questions, and was that something that I could address in this overview. And so I'll do that as well and talk a little bit about workforce planning. So starting off, and I'll just kind of go through a litany. This is what HR has worked on developing, and I'll give you a brief overview of each program or let you know where you can find it. So the first thing that we developed, and this was immediate, was the Qualified Disaster Relief Program. And this is a federal program. UC Merced developed it in partnership with Travel and Treasury, and it's payments for reasonable and necessary expenses incurred by designated and essential on-site employees. You can find more information at travel@ucmerced.edu. This can allow up to $1,000 to pay for childcare expenses for folks like custodial or police or anybody who is designated an emergency personnel on campus. There's been a lot of questions about the job exchange program, so I'll answer that a little bit. I wanted to talk about that or not forget about it. We also developed a catastrophic leave bank, and we already had a catastrophic leave program where employees could donate to an individual. But we didn't have a leave bank for the general employee population. And so you can donate hours, vacation, I believe, or sick, and it goes into a bank for those that might really need it. More information can be found at benefits@ucmerced.edu. And a lot of this information is on the HR website, or we coincide with the emergency management website as well. I will discuss in a moment position control, but it's one of the ways that we're preserving jobs here on campus. We've also implemented a coaching resolution program. So, we know that working at home can be a struggle because you're not face to face. And so you're not really getting the kinesthetic or body language that's being portrayed. And that can create some conflict or just even how to navigate situations. So we do have the coaching resolution program, and Luke Wiesner is with HR and works on that program. Kevin Reyes and the talent development team have hosted bi-weekly workshops to support remote workers, keep calm and remote on workshops, and those have been extremely valuable. And we do have telecommute resources, and this is in partnership with OIT, and curated resources are available on that website. One of the major overhauls and big ticket items was implementing all of the COVID-related leaves that have come forth. The paid administrative leave, I'll just throw out a bunch of acronyms, emergency family medical leave, EPSL, this was all through the CARES Act, and other state and federal leaves. It's a very complex matrix, but it does provide that safety net of time and benefits to employees who are facing COVID-related, experiences. We have changes to your benefits program that support both staff and faculty during this pandemic. You can also find that information at benefits@ucmerced.edu. We have enhanced telehealth options and benefits, and they have a wide array of workshops that are offered, pretty amazing workshops. We've waived costs for screening and testing for COVID-related testing and screening. We have allowable changes in medical plans, health and dependent care due to COVID. And on May 21, the Board of Regents voted to implement provisions of the CARES Act, right? And so that's to make it easier for participants to access funds from their retirement savings plans in case of an emergency. I talked a little bit about EAP and all of the wonderful benefits that they have, the webinars that they hold on, I believe, a monthly, sometimes bi-weekly basis, so those have been enhanced. And there's also enhanced COVID resources through our EAP programs. President Napolitano approved a temporary increase to that 4-month extension for maximum vacation accruals, and she approved that yesterday, so June 29th. And that is retroactive from June 1 through December 31. So the maximum vacation accrual has increased. There has been recently, last week, you're now able to use sick leave for childcare purposes. And so that's on UCNet, and we have or are releasing a communications very quickly. I believe it's coming in the Monday memo. We have a voluntary separation program that's coming soon. And we also coming soon are more resources for working alternate work schedules due to parenting. We understand that it's a struggle to try to manage your family and your workload at the same time. And so how can you do that effectively, and how can managers and supervisors really allow that maximum flexibility for employees as you're working at home, trying to navigate this, COVID telework experience. We are part of the Emergency Operations Center, and we're working on contact tracing and also the COVID Response Center. So those are the things that HR has been doing. Some of the things now that I want to talk about are the frequently asked questions that we saw that were submitted. And so I'm going to call it job futures. I understand that COVID not only brings a lot of anxiety in your personal lives, but also in your work life. And everybody knows that the state and federal budgets, it's all over the news. That's the doom and gloom news, I think that Provost Camfield was talking about. But really what I hear you're interested in hearing about is how will your job and pay be affected because of COVID, because of budget cuts. Things like, will you be furloughed? Will you receive a pay cut? And there's many rumors that I've heard across campus. None of them are true, but the rumor mill has started. And so I really want to share what I know, up to date, right? Things rapidly evolve with COVID, but just this open, honest, transparent information, timely information to help it kind of alleviate some of the worries or rumor mills that have spread. Our priority is to preserve jobs, not cut jobs. And so I'll speak about what we are doing in a moment in order to do that. I think that there's items so there's different approval levels for what a campus is able to do. And there are items that require regential or presidential approval. So it's not up to each individual campus on whether or not to furlough. It's not up to each individual campus on enacting across the board pay cuts. In most or many cases, a campus cannot go out on their own without every other campus doing the same thing. So UC San Diego has to operate the same way as UC Berkeley has to operate the same as UC Merced. So all of this regent and presidential approval must be bargained with labor. So the questions about furlough or salary reductions fall into that category as a system-wide action. It's only available if the regents and the president approve it. And there are many regulations that they have to go forth and approval processes in order to enact this. At this point, these plans, and there's plans that they have to develop, right, in order to be approved by the regents, in order to go through contract bargaining. These plans have not been developed by SID at this point. So what are we doing? I mentioned position control, and I'll speak about that, and I think you'll hear about it a little bit later on as well. But I want to talk about it as far as what we're doing to preserve jobs. And we're currently using position control and temporary work reassignments through the job exchange program, or the job bank, same thing, to mitigate any workforce reductions at this time. So again, the two things that we're using to, ensure that we can preserve jobs are position control and temporary work reassignments. And so I want to walk you through position control so you can understand the criteria, what's currently paused, and how we're implementing it across campus. So all salary-related actions are paused, and this includes all reclassifications, equity requests, and stipends. Those are all on pause through June 30th, 2021. That's a significant cost savings to help preserve positions. I mentioned that all existing stipends have been paused. And there's a 6-month hold that's been placed on all new and backfill hires, including limited and contract hires. So that preserves funding in order to preserve jobs as well. We are allowing new positions to go forward, but there's specific criteria that must be met. And the criteria includes critical to the health and safety of the campus and campus assets. And that includes things such as public safety, custodial, etc. Positions required to support the research, remote instruction, or student success, and also the public health priority of the campus. Positions for which deferral would result in greater fiscal cost to the unit, for example, or for revenue streams, for example, grant-funded positions. And positions that would, if left vacant, pose a significant legal or audit compliance risk. So how do we enact this, right? We have strict criteria. A weekly meeting is scheduled with the chancellor, the provost, the CFO, and their designees, their representatives, and we review the requests on a weekly basis. Decisions are made in that meeting, and then HR executes 2 business days later. So this generally all occurs within the same week, which is a less than 7-day turnaround period. So we're moving rapidly, but there's definitely criteria, and we're looking at the essential functions of the job and whether they support the criteria, and also the teaching, research, public service, or student life, and public health priorities of the campus. So I think I'm going to stop there with my overview, and I think that answers a bulk of the questions that all of you submitted previously. I know there's more questions, and I'll come back online in a while to answer some of those. So thank you very much for joining today.
Thank you, Nicole. Yes, we will have some additional questions for you. So thank you very much for your updates. We'll go ahead and pass this on to the People First work group. So Danya, Cinnamon, and Hala, I give you the screen.
Thank you, Alvin. It's me again. I told you I like to wave. For those who don't know, I'm Danya Matos, the Associate Chancellor and Chief Diversity Officer, and it's such an honor to be able to give you a small preview of the work that the People First work group has been doing. First, I want to thank all of you who took our climate survey and continue to participate in our virtual focus groups. And I also want to give you a save the date. We're going to be hosting a town hall on People First, which will be a more lengthy presentation and the opportunity for you to engage in with each other, with the action planning in some breakout rooms. That's going to be on August 18th from 12 to 1 p.m. And so we will monitor registrations to see if we have to break out with our Zoom 300 people capacity, but we really look forward to having you there. I want to thank my co-lead of the People First work group, Dr. Jonathan Grady, as well as all the other People First work group members. And as I turn this over to the extraordinary Cinnamon and Hala, who've been doing so much of this work with the data, I will drop the link in the chat. One of the things we're really offering is request for consultations with our group where we can help you manage and engage with the data. And so remember this morning in the welcome when I said you all are leaders. So my urge to you as leaders is to really engage with the data, bring these conversations back to your units, consider how to continue building community in this virtual world. And I thank you for helping us continue putting you, our people, first. Take it away, Sidma and Hala.
Thanks, Danya. All right, let me share my screen. Thumbs up, people can see it. Yay, okay, awesome. As Danya said, my name is Cinnamon Danube, and I work in institutional research and decision support here on campus, and I'm presenting with my colleague, Hala, who is a graduate student and also works with Danya in the EDI office. And we want to share some results from the 2020 COVID-19 experience survey that you all took back in May. So a quick presentation overview. We're going to talk a little bit just briefly about the survey administration. We're going to talk a little bit about some of our data exploration and sharing procedures. And then we're going to dive right in. We identified 5 different themes in the responses on the survey. And so we are going to talk about those themes, and particularly we're going to focus on staff data, as this is a staff town hall. We are going to share a resource list toward the end. It'll give you basically resources that you can choose to peruse on your own time if you want to do a deeper dive into any of the themes that we are talking about here in this presentation. And then we will have a little bit of time of questions at the end. So into the survey administration. So the survey was developed by the People First work group back in May, and it had questions in 3 key areas. So one was your well-being. We had questions about your work, and then we also had questions about perceptions about the campus response to the COVID-19 pandemic. It was administered in mid to late May, so that's really important context actually for thinking about the survey data, because the survey was administered a couple of months ago, and even as we saw from Nicole's presentation earlier, a lot of things have changed, and a lot of essentially resources have been added to try to address some of the issues that were raised on the survey. So Hala and I will talk a little bit about those as well. Just to kind of, as a reminder, the sample for the survey was Senate and non-Senate faculty, postdocs, graduate students, and staff. As I noted, we're going to focus on the staff data in this presentation. And estimated response rates for the survey, depending upon the group, range between 24 to 31%. So in terms of staff who took the survey, so we got responses from 301 staff, and this was about 48% of the total respondents who took the survey. Not surprisingly, there are a lot of staff, and a lot of staff took the survey. So again, we thank you. I also put up this division unit slide just to let you know we did ask questions of respondents, a little bit about their background, what their division unit was, and other questions about themselves. So if you are looking at the survey dashboard or our full narrative summary, we do call out some of these groups, particularly when we notice key differences across different divisions and units. In terms of data exploration and sharing, Danya, Hala, and I spoke with the leadership group on Tuesday and shared the results. And we'll also have on the resources slide a link to that full presentation if you want to take a look at it. So we have shared information previously with campus leadership, and we also encourage them to do some deeper dives into the survey dashboard and Tableau that we created as well, particularly as it pertains to specific divisions and units, because as I said, we did see some different patterns across different groups. And as Danya also mentioned, the People First work group, we're going to have a link on the People First webpage that allows you to request a consultation with us. So if you want us to work through any of the data with you or your group, we're happy to do that. So feel free to submit a consultation request if that would be of interest. And then I also want to note some activities that the EDI office is currently engaging in. So they are currently developing a plan to engage in some follow-up survey efforts. As it pertains to the COVID-19 survey, we're thinking about doing the survey again perhaps sometime in October. So we'd be able to look at differences between how folks responded in May, how they're responding in October, in particular to see if any of the resources or strategies that the university has deployed to address some of the concerns are having some of the positive impacts that we might hope. So there will be a follow-up survey. And Danya also mentioned this, the EDI office is doing focus groups, and Hala will be presenting in a moment, but she's leading the focus group efforts. And so we will note on the results slide as we go through, we'll have a little asterisk for areas where the EDI office is currently doing focus groups. They will be transcribing those and then also providing a report again sometime this fall. So I'm going to dive into the 5 themes. I'm going to talk about the first one, and then Hala is going to take over with the remaining 4. So the first theme that we identified on the survey was campus resources and response to the COVID-19 pandemic, again, back in May when the survey was administered. And the good news is there are actually a couple of positive feedback areas, which is wonderful. So back in May, folks were generally pretty happy with the way that the campus was responding to the pandemic, managing the pandemic, and they also had a pretty strong belief that the campus cared about their well-being. And so in terms of recommendations, sort of continuing the practices, encourage these types of survey responses is something that our work group would recommend. So for example, weekly briefings, the Monday memo, kind of doing a good job of getting information out there to people. And this is actually interesting because Nicole brought this up quite a bit. So there's a lot of sort of a lack of awareness of some of the resources that the campus has put out. And that was something that we noticed on the survey. So one of our recommendations, and again, this town hall is aimed at addressing this gap, is helping people realize what resources are out there to support them. So we're continuing to try to do that. Make sure people know what's out there, and also sort of engaging or encouraging engagement and assessment efforts to make sure that the resources that are available are actually helpful to people. All right, Hala, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, so I'll go over the theme of work, and I'll try to go over these pretty quickly so we can be mindful of time, so apologies if I speed through. But first, one of the positives we're seeing is that folks feel that their need for equipment and technology to work remotely have been met, and so we recommend to continue in engaging in this type of support as we continue to work remotely. Another thing that was noted is that folks see that there's a decrease in their work productivity, and so we highly recommend that, along with seeing that folks feel that they're facing an increased workload, that we adjust both workload and productivity expectations to be able to navigate the fact that people are being able to work less and in different hours when they are working remotely. And a large issue that we see is for ergonomic challenges. And one of the issues with this is not only to address the ergonomic issues that are coming up for folks, but to also develop strategies that address these challenges consistently across various groups and divisions and units. And we also see that folks are dealing with additional care responsibilities at home that includes childcare and adult and elder care as well. And so we highly recommend that we acknowledge and provide support for flexibility for folks that need it. And so one of the things that has been developed for staff is they're working on developing resources for supervisors and managers to ensure flexibility for folks that have additional care responsibilities at home. The next slide. And for economic concerns, which Nicole discussed quite a bit, folks are, feeling some anxiety around job security and compensation. And so for folks who are already in precarious positions, which is now being heightened by the pandemic, we highly recommend that we provide support for those folks, and more importantly, to continue to provide timely communication about potential financial impacts, which relates to spouse and partner employment, and folks had some concern about that. And so we continue that recommendation of providing timely communications, particularly where there may be financial impacts on the family. The next slide. And when it comes to connection, naturally, a lot of us are feeling disconnected and isolated. Luckily, the need for supervisor and employee and team connections are generally being met. So we encourage that we continue to foster these types of connections. However, of course, folks are feeling isolated from both friends and colleagues. And so we recommend that we start developing or continue developing resources for improving feelings of connection to the campus and to decrease feelings of isolation. And so for the staff assembly is exploring ways to continue connecting online throughout the year as we continue to work remotely. Next slide. And communication is quite a big theme, so we're exploring this theme overall in the focus groups. Overall, we had quite a bit of positive feedback. Folks feel that the communications from campus are appropriately comprehensive, frequent, and timely. And so we recommend to continue engaging in practices that maintain these positive outlooks. So we recommend that we use survey results to inform messaging and to continue communications. Folks had a lot of positive feedback for the UC Merced webpage, for example. The staff assembly to continue engaging in the virtual leadership chats, which a lot of individuals also appreciated. And something that we saw that was a change since May is that staff who work with students started to receive student communications first, so that when students approached them with questions and concerns, they were prepared to assist. And a larger issue that we saw is that folks feel left out of decision-making conversations about the future, that they're being told when decisions are being made, but not when they're in the process of being made. So we recommend that we engage in the campus community in decision-making whenever it is appropriate, so that folks feel like they're in the loop. And this is the resource list that Cinnamon mentioned. So I want to emphasize that we're having the People First Work Town Hall on August 18th from 12 to 1, where we'll take a deeper dive into the kind of snapshot we gave you all today. We have the larger presentation that we presented to Joint Council on the People First Work Group webpage, so you can take a look at that. You can also find a link to the narrative summary that we have that takes a deeper dive into all of the findings. Folks can also access the Tableau dashboard. You can see the data and again, request a consultation if you'd like through the People First Work Group webpage. And we also have a summary of responses related specifically to remote instruction, since that was kind of a larger theme that was covered in the survey. And lastly, we also have a link to the narrative summary and lessons for planning that came from the UQ survey, which was given to undergraduates. And we'll go ahead and take questions.
Well, actually,
So,
go ahead, Alvin.
yeah. I was just going to say thank you very much, Hala, Cinnamon, and Donnie. There will be questions, and actually, before, in case we lose Greg, I do have one question that I wanted to toss out there to him that came in live, and so we're going to go ahead and switch over to kind of the questions and answer section of this town hall. And so, Greg, I want to ask you a quick question. So, and I'm directing this at you because I think it might be good to come from you or to hear from you or your thoughts. But so coming in the Meet the Chancellor session earlier this week on Tuesday, Chancellor Munoz spoke about R1 status and growing faculty and as priority for the future. So how can we meet those goals of going to an R1 institution without growing staff in related to functions of shifting to an R1 institution? And so he may not have heard me. Sorry. Let me unmute you. There you go.
First, we won't be growing faculty next year. We will probably be doing very, very few searches, and they will probably be mostly about replacing lines we've lost. We've lost 8 people who will end this year, and we will probably search to replace some, if not all of those, in the coming year. We intend to continue to build out our planning exercises that do not look at hiring faculty and staff as 2 different tasks. Instead, we really want to look at if we think of a faculty member as driving a certain number of actions on campus. Say it's a bench scientist who's going to be teaching lab courses as well as doing lab research. Well, every one of those we add, there is some proportion of staff increase that also needs to happen in order to make sure that teaching labs are supported, that the labs themselves supported with EH&S, with custodial, and then there are questions of other kinds of support. IT support would be needed, library support would be needed. The number of students that would be essentially going per faculty member would need to be supported through student affairs, through curriculum management, through the registrar's office. Everything is connected. And my goal is to build the planning environment in which those connections are never forgotten, because it doesn't help to hire a faculty member who can't do the work because there's no support. That's like bringing on students without anybody to teach them. It just makes no sense. So if, let me rephrase that, when we go back to hiring new faculty, we will hire the needed staff to support them in everything they do, from grants and contracts, to custodial, to grounds, to registrar, to student affairs, you name it. These things all connect. Now, in this, we've run lean for a long time. We will continue to run lean. There's to finish the metaphor, it's not like there's going to be a sudden surfeit of food for us to gobble down. But that said, we understand that none of this works unless all of it works together. And a huge part of that is dependent on enrollment. So we'll be working on developing transfer enrollments as well as regular first term undergraduate enrollments and graduate enrollments. And some of those are on our own and some of those are part of the UC system. There are a lot of exciting things that I think we can do right now as part of the system. But the core of the question was not how are we going to get back on track to grow, but to make sure that we don't grow disproportionately. It's kind of like a bodybuilder who makes the mistake of concentrating only on arms and has spindly legs. It just doesn't work. We have to grow evenly.
Thank you, Greg. Sorry for tossing that out there while you were.
No, that's quite all right. I'm sitting there. My other screen says, right. Wait, the meeting host will let you in soon. So when that changes, on.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Greg. So I'm going to direct the next question to Nicole. And this is in regards to the job bank. And so we've heard about staff who perceived as having less work will be moved over to kind of that job bank. So the idea is, or the question is, what's the logistic of that job bank, and is that currently live and working right now?
You're muted, Nicole.
Okay, how's that?
There we go.
Okay, great. Thank you for the question. So currently the job bank is live and working, and there's, again, a misconception about the job bank. It is a program for managers and supervisors to identify really the work that needs to be performed in their department, because we know that it can be difficult with position control, and there's still a lot of work that has to occur on campus. And so the job bank or job exchange program temporarily offers support to other departments through redeployment of existing staff. There's another benefit in that may aid an employee in growing their skills, gaining experience in other areas of the campus temporarily. But it was developed for employee retention, and we've used it as such a couple of different times. There's plenty of work on campus, no doubt about that. So supervisors will need to fill out a simple form to describe the work or tasks that need to be completed. And then staff can work with their supervisors to place their resume into the job bank. And our recruiters from talent acquisition will provide matches to the department. So it's a temporary loan program, really in order to complete the needed tasks on campus.
Thank you, Nicole. My next question, I'm going to direct over.
Greg.
Yes, Greg. Yes, Greg.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, I just really want to emphasize what Nicole said about this being temporary. When we come back, all the things that are being done now will have to be done again. We do not want to lose the people who have those skills and the commitment to UC Merced. But this COVID climate is also creating work that we didn't have before, and we must get it done. So it's really made sense to us in senior leadership to create these opportunities to move people around so that we maintain our community and we get the work that needs to be done now, and we keep ourselves in a position to go back when we can go back. So it really is meant to be temporary, but as Nicole also said, there's a positive component to that, and that those who get reassigned temporarily may learn other skills that will help them in their growth as employees down the road. So as she said at the beginning, our goal is to keep people, not to be in a position to say, oh, well, your work isn't necessary right now, goodbye. But instead to say, we have other work that needs to be done, and let's make sure it gets done by our people.
Right. And I think that's great to hear that that staff retention is something that we want to maintain as well. So I thank you very much, Greg, for providing your insights. So my next question, I'm going to direct over to our Chief Resilience Officer, Andy Boyd. I do see you on here. So, and this has been a very popular question. So will we be offering COVID testing on campus? And so I'm gonna also tack on, what ability does the UC have to provide staff working on campus with good quality PPE necessary to commit to their daily work?
Two great questions. I'll start the first one on testing. We're actively negotiating with the occupational health medical provider to be performing our testing on campus. We're kind of in a good situation in that student health services just moved to their new location from the 2020 project, which frees up some space on campus that meets medical requirements that we'll be able to actually have the occ health provider come to campus and perform testing. We are limited on the quantity of testing that we can have in a day from the standpoint of quick turnaround time, expedient turnaround time. And we're going to be focusing on symptomatic testing as being the key first area. But this has been a big push for Dr. Thelma Hurd, Josh Dubroff, Elizabeth Gunther. There's been a ton of effort to make this happen. And we're right at that finish line there of making that happen. And I expect it in the next week or two, honestly. And then the second one around PPE. In general, the campus, I think, does a really good job of providing quality PPE that's from reputable brands, and make sure that staff have it according to the functions they do. I think one thing that's been kind of conflated with COVID is that face coverings. If you actually go to OSHA, you'll find out that face coverings are not PPE by their definition. And the provost started off really well, saying that the purpose of the face covering is actually for me to not share my germs with you, and the same thing for you to not share your germs with me. And so it really is a matter of just, containing our respiratory, stuff out as a means to not transmit further. So we definitely have, EH&S has been doing a good job of making sure our staff are appropriately trained with the right PPE for the functions they do. And we're going to continue to monitor this as it relates to both COVID-19 and the jobs we have to do. And then I think just in general, people should be aware that PPE is kind of constrained in general with the supply chain just because of COVID and the gloves, masks. And so we're taking a very proactive approach at the EOC on managing that as a stockpile for the campus.
So I'm going to follow the two questions and your response with another question. So are there plans to modify a workspace for staff whose desks or work location may not be 6 feet apart? That currently exists now.
Right. I think that it's one of those where it's going to be a depends answer, and it really becomes on how we look to operationalize the campus and the office environment in particular. Right now, we're not even cleared to come back and do some of the broader office work the way that we would want to. So we really have to follow the county regulations and the state on how we do that. Modifying the desk, I think, is going to be situation dependent. There's other alternatives such as shift schedules and having people actually just come in at different hours as a means to not create the close proximity to each other. So there's definitely a team that's been assessing some of this. I see Maggie Saunders' face up here. She's been leading a lot of that. And we'll be looking at it from a prioritization of supporting the campus as the work that we need physically on campus, especially for the fall. And then as we look into the spring, how we, assuming things from a public health perspective, how we accommodate and support that requirement.
Thank you. So I'm going to shift my next question over to our Vice Chancellor and Chief Financial Officer, Mike Riley. And this one recently actually just came in. So emails recently went out from Transportation Department regarding parking fees resuming on August 1st. Under normal circumstances, so I'm reading the question verbatim. So under normal circumstances, I understand that parking fees have to be paid, but why now do only critical workers or essential workers who are required to be on campus have to pay for parking?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we did put a delay on that to resume paid parking effective, I want to say September 1st, so that the first, and if you remember, we pay for parking in arrears. So a deduction wouldn't come out of somebody's paycheck until October 1st, for instance. You know, we weighed the criteria fairly carefully with regards to how we pay for parking for the costs that we incur on a regular basis, which is why we're recommending for people to pay for daily parking, if to the extent that they're coming to campus at a less frequency. For people who are coming to the campus on a regular basis, we're encouraging those individuals to pay for our lowest rate of parking, the commuter pass, which I believe is about $38 per month. That's relatively inexpensive compared to what other campuses are charging. So far, we're currently not operating outside of what is normal for higher education institutions. A lot of the other campuses, I believe all 9 of the other campuses, as well as other higher education institutions, have started to resume paid parking for the fall semester for the few individuals that are coming to campus, and that would include students as well, who are bringing cars, for the students that are coming to campus for in-class instruction, or the students who will be living in our on-campus housing. To the extent that that's limited, we'll continue to, we'll have these parking rates extended to them. But we did weigh very carefully the cost associated with maintaining our facilities in the decision-making framework. But we wanted to provide, we didn't want to overextend ourselves, so we are freezing the rates that have been extended in the past. There will be no parking increases. We had originally planned for a parking increase this year, but we decided that this now was not the right time, which is why we froze it to spring 2020 rates. But there is a low-cost option available to individuals to the extent that they want to take advantage of it, which is the $38 commuter rate, which I believe is at the Bellevue lot.
Thank you. I'm gonna ask the next question, or I'm gonna direct the next question to Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs, Charles. I think I saw you on here. And the question is, will students be isolated or tested upon moving in? And again, I'm reading it verbatim. So we as essential employees will be the ones exposed to these students from highly infectious areas. If not, why?
Sure. So yeah, we are looking at limiting the number of students who will be living on campus in the fall to right around 500 students. Those students will need to start symptom monitoring 14 days before they're able to move into the campus, as well as to provide results, negative results of a test that is part of that process. If the individuals are not able to provide that test because they may not have access to the testing in their current location, then they will still have to do the symptom monitoring. We will do the testing once they arrive on campus, but have them be quarantined during that 14-day period until, or however long it takes for the test results to come back. So that will be part of that process. We also then will be going through a process throughout the fall semester where we will be doing continuous asymptomatic testing of all of our students that will be living on campus. Students will be living in single rooms as a way to minimize that interaction and that contact. They also will be certain guidelines that we'll be working with and communicating to those students about what to expect as far as what on-campus living will look like, including the fact that we will only be doing grab-and-go dining service in the Pavilion Dining Center. Just for folks to know, we opened up on-campus housing to those students who we guarantee housing to, either as part of their scholarship package, our Region Scholars and our PLS Scholars, or those individuals who we guarantee housing to as former foster youth, our homeless youth. We also opened up housing to individuals where this was the safest or only place for them to live, and as well as individuals where, from a financial security standpoint, living on campus provided them with the most secure housing situation. So that's kind of who we opened up campus housing to, and we'll continue to work with that student population to do the symptom monitoring as well as the negative testing results.
And then if I can follow up the question, Charles, there's another question in regards to students, but it probably also is related to staff. So I open the question up to the cabinet members who may want to chime in as well. So with COVID-19 at its highest, how will UC keep employees notified of students infected? And so I'm going to also say staff infected. And what is the protocol for entering students' room or student areas if they're not required to wear masks in the living areas for students?
Yes, students will be required to wear cloth face coverings. It's part of the overall campus policy, even if they are walking down the hall to go to the bathroom to brush their teeth. And so that once they leave that physical privacy of their room, they will be expected to wear that physical face covering. We don't have any expectations other than staff that will help in cleaning public areas, that there will be guest traffic in those spaces. We'll obviously have to work closely with our facilities team if there is maintenance requirements inside a student space and how we kind of work to accommodate that and to address that need. But we're not anticipating that there will be guests or a lot of traffic in and out of those spaces as we move forward. And then as we have positive cases, the campus, obviously for reasons of confidentiality, we won't report out the individual name, but we do have a work site team that will be looking at investigating any positive cases related to the campus, whether it's a faculty, staff, or student, that will notify then other members of the university community of their potential contact or interaction with somebody that has tested positive. And so that's a work site investigation team that we are standing up with case managers, as well as that COVID kind of contact coordination team that D. Aker is helping to stand up for us as well. So that is part of the way that we would not only contact individuals who might have some potential exposure, but the way that we would notify campus and do everything possible to help mitigate possible transmission. Andy, did I cover that correctly?
Yeah, you did a good job. I would say that, just to give it a name for everybody here on the call, the COVID Response Center is really going to be that broad function that helps us do that case management and is that hotline to call for information so that we can triage the situation as we need to, and then to obviously work with our partners, whether it's facility management, the EOC or others, to basically minimize our campus risk of exposure, and then providing guidance to the staff member or student and faculty on what their next steps are. So that's definitely a function that's coming online, and there'll be more news coming out on that over the next week or so.
Thank you. And so my next question, I'm going to direct back to Mike Riley. So can you provide details about what the review process looks like to fill a vacant position during this hiring freeze? The longer the process takes, the more stress and pressure it is put on a staff that has to cover a vacant position without any fair compensation, especially when the work is considered above their classification range. And I also open it up to Nicole in case you want to chime in.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think Nicole had covered some of it, but I'll go over it in greater level of detail. So as a result of the enhanced position control protocols that we established earlier this year to control our payroll costs for both career and contract positions, we requested that in order to fill through a recruitment, it must go through this review process. And so Nicole had described the process of submitting in the review process with the chancellor and the provost. But and we understand that this burden of this process places a significant burden on staff, but given the significant financial losses the university is experiencing, controlling future costs is imperative to the institution. But it's also critical to our philosophy of preserving existing jobs. To that end, this is why stipends, reclasses, extensions of contract recruitments, those have all been placed on hold, as Nicole had mentioned earlier, through to the next fiscal year. But as positions are submitted from by a department for a request for recruitment, it gets initially reviewed from a group called the Position Delegates Group, which is then submitted to HR for consideration with the chancellor and the provost. We meet on a weekly basis. We try to turn around those decisions as quickly as possible, knowing that this places a burden on the departments. I think Greg wanted to comment as well. No? Okay. But the campus is taking this very seriously and exercising a level of fiscal responsibility in order to prioritize the preservation of the institution. And this is pretty consistent with the UCOP directive, but it does go through this enhanced review process that I hope is not permanent. I mean, this should be a temporary issue. I hope that we do not have to go through this for more than the next 12 months, but it is a reality of the significant financial losses that we expect to experience over the next several years as a result of COVID and as a result of the recession through the state, as they've cut our revenue source, along with all of the other 9 UC campuses that we operate within. So I don't know, Nicole, if you wanted to expand on that. I think that we had talked about the process in a great level of detail, the review process, how quickly we try to turn that around so that it doesn't place an overburden on the people that are doing the work today.
Right, Mike, you covered everything that I would have said, so thank you for doing that. But really, it's within a 7-day turnaround time, so it's a pretty quick fix.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So I'm trying to keep an eye on the time, and we are 1 minute over. And so I do want to thank everyone for joining us today, as well as thank all of our speakers today and our presenters and partners for making this happen. So a big thank you and shout out to everyone. Priya, I see your hand raised. Did you have a question really quick?
Yeah, really quickly. I've been getting a bunch of emails and text messages for all the folks who were not able to join and who registered. So we apologize. This is a historic participation for staff assembly meeting. So we're glad that more folks are engaged, but this is a learning moment for us too. So going forward, we will be aware and make sure it's live streamed also.
Yes.
Please accept our apologies for those. I know you can't see me, but we apologize. And again, going forward, we'll be more mindful. That's all.
Yes, and as mentioned earlier, this town hall is recorded, and as soon as it gets set up, we will be publishing it. So for staff who may not have been able to join, we will make it available for everyone. Again, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to everyone who spoke and presented today. I do encourage you all to visit our staff assembly website if you have any questions, comments. We do have videos posted and resources posted there. Again, thank you very much and enjoy your day.